Hey everybody, welcome back to Christian Penguin 1990. My name's Matthew. We're continuing our creation versus evolutionism series, and today, like I said, the next one we were going to cover is the actual age of the Earth and the evidence, and some of the evidence, not all. There's well over 100 evidences that you can find on it, but we're just going to cover some of the evidences from different things that help show the Earth is not millions or billions of years old. Okay, so it's going to be entitled "Why Earth Isn't Millions of Years Old." And this first set of evidence is from the stars. Now, star clusters. Science reveals that some of these clusters with their stars are moving so rapidly together in a certain direction that it should be impossible for them to remain together if the universe was very old. In other words, they're moving so fast that after millions or billions of years, they would have just flown off somewhere. From what I was able to gather out of those when I was taking the notes, like I said, I always take notes. It's easier to keep everything together, especially with an outline and so on. But from what I was able to look up with that, the calculations they did do help kind of back that up. Where if after billions of years they were going to go faster and that their time, they would actually been further away from their galaxies or their planets than what they are, and they actually wouldn't be a cluster anymore. So the star clusters help show a young age for the Earth and the universe. Now, large stars. Some stars are so enormous in diameter that it is thought that they could not have existed for even a few million years. Otherwise, their initial larger mass would have been impossibly large. Okay, so in other words, for their decay rate, for their size that they've been going through, now this is stars, not planets. Those are two different things. So their decay rate from their energy and everything, they would have to match where they are today would have meant they were very, very enormous back then. So some radiate energy at 100,000 to 1 million times more than our own sun. So like I said, if you go by the uniformitarian doctrine where everything stays the same, there's no change, it didn't speed up, it didn't slow down, then these planets billions of years ago would have been so dang big that they would have taken up probably a galaxy or part of a galaxy themselves, not like they are today where they're taking up just a small part. They would have taken up a huge part. They probably were within our solar system, they probably would have taken up our part of the solar system out of the Milky Way galaxy, is what it's saying. On the hydrogen basis of stellar energy, they could not have enough hydrogen to radiate such fast rates for long ages. In other words, there's not enough hydrogen for them to stay at this rate of decay or using up the energy. Which basically I think that's about as straightforward as you can get. It doesn't have enough hydrogen, which has been scientifically proven. High energy in stars, or high energy stars, excuse me, not in stars, high energy stars. Some stars are radiating energy so intensely, which kind of matches up with number two, that they could not possibly have survived for a long period of time. For example, O and B star or B class stars, Wolf-Rayet stars, and P Cygni, I don't think I'm pronouncing that right, Cygni stars are some of the stars they're talking about with this. Their energy output is very intense. Standard solar energy theory, they should only last 50,000 to 300,000 years. And yes, that's a big vast gap, but you figure that versus billions of years, which is what the evolution side is saying that they are. But so actual scientific study has shown through this theory, which is their own theory, these stars shouldn't last for more than 50,000 to 300,000 years, but yet they're saying the universe is almost 18 billion years old. Okay, so binary stars. Now, let me stop here and explain a binary star for those who don't know. Binary star is when you have two stars in the same orbit. Many of these binary systems point us to a young age for the universe because they consist of theoretically young and old stars circling one another, which is what I said. That's you have two stars circling one another or in the same orbit or close to the same orbit and so on. And they're finding that one star will be very old while the other star will be very young. And they're like, well, wait a minute, if they're created at the same time, how are they together? So a lot of them are saying, well, that kind of helps point to a younger universe than what they originally thought, but they're leaving it there. Hydrogen found in the universe. If the universe were as old as Big Bang theorists contend, there should be little hydrogen in it. However, what has been found is, well, let me keep going. The reason is because it would have all been transformed into helium by now, according to the theory of solar energy. Yet the stellar spectra reveals an abundance of hydrogen. Okay, so I guess I should just finish the thought earlier before I stopped. But yeah, so according to stellar spectra, there's overwhelming abundance of hydrogen. But according to their theory of solar energy, there should be almost no hydrogen. Should have been all become helium. So that's another side proof for a young universe and young Earth. Now we're going into the evidence from our own solar system. Solar collapse. At its rate of shrinkage, as little as 50,000 years, the sun would have been so large that our oceans would have boiled. But in far less a time than 50,000 years, life here would have ceased to exist. Is actually the last calculation I saw on that. When I was doing this, I think it would have been less than 30,000 years, if I remember the calculation. The sun would have been so hot that life would have just burned up, and it have to be under at least 20,000 years before the sun would have used up enough energy to where life could have existed on Earth, if I remember. But there's an article in Physics Today from September 1979, and it's entitled "Sun is Shrinking." You can get a lot of information there. I didn't want to speak the whole article because to me that would have been like quote mining and so on. I try to stay away from quotes. I'd rather use actual, science and so on to try and prove my side. I don't like using quote mining if I can avoid it. Now, I will use a quote to give emphasis to something, but other than that, just to go through a bunch of quotes and have very little actual, science to back up what I'm saying, no, I don't like to do that. Solar neutrinos. Okay, the sun is emitting hardly any neutrinos. This evidence points directly to a very youthful sun. In other words, by their theory, they're saying that there should have been a bunch of neutrinos being emitted, but yet there's hardly any out of the sun. And a lot of creationists are saying, well, that helps point to a younger solar system. I'm still doing research on the neutrinos. That's kind of a new one to me. I hadn't heard that one yet. So that's just where they're saying with it. Like I said, I have to do some more research on it. I haven't heard that one yet. I've heard others, but I have not heard that one. Okay. Comets. Now, this one I have heard about. Comets are continually disintegrating. This is because they are composed of bits of rocky debris held together by frozen gases and water. Evidently, all the comets should self-destruct within a time frame of about 10,000 years. And what they mean by that is this. The water material and everything that makes up the tail and the comet itself, by passing by especially the ones of ours that go around the sun and then come back, every time they pass by a sun, not just our sun, but a sun or something, they lose material, it melts, goes off, and so on. And their calculation for that is that every comet should disappear after 10,000 years because of how it does that. Now, the thing that came about to try and get rid of this problem came from Oort, and because of that it's called the Oort cloud. Now the idea is that it's like 100 billion light years out there. Nobody can see it. They've never seen it. They've never studied it. They've never done anything with it. But a lot of people have spoken about it. They've even written some up, papers, books, whatever. And their idea is that the comets are made in the Oort cloud, and they just somehow come this way. Something propels them out of the cloud and all. And some websites have actually come out and said that, well, in order for us to stop talking about it, you have to disprove it. Well, my thought is, how about you actually definitively prove it true before you start talking about it? But, otherwise it's just you just running your mouth about something and there's no actual proof with it. But yet it's getting printed up in books. It's being taught as it might be an actual fact, and yet there's no actual proof behind it. And that's why creationists are against a lot that's in this theory, which goes into textbooks, which I'll cover a lot later. Because I want to stay on track with this. Comet water. This goes along with what I was saying. Many small comets are continually striking the Earth, yet each strike adds water to our planet. So much so that if our planet was billions of years old, I think the last one was 4.6 billion or 4.7 billion, somewhere around there. Oceans would actually be much deeper. They have much more water than what they have today. And that's just by the comets hitting the Earth, and they've actually done the scientific calculations and so on, and they're saying that it would be much deeper. So the fact that the oceans aren't deeper than what they are from the comet water alone leads people to a younger Earth than billions and millions of years. Solar winds. As the sun's radiation flows outward, it applies an outward force on very, very small particles orbiting the sun. All the particles smaller than 100 thousandths of a centimeter in diameter should have long ago been blown out like a candle of our solar system. Studies through the satellites have revealed these particles are in overabundance. So in other words, if the universe itself was billions of years, even the Earth being billions of years, in our solar system, these particles should be gone. Gone, kaput, not there. But yet they're found in abundance, which leads to a younger system, younger solar system, younger Earth and universe. Solar drag. Now this one, I'll have to admit, is another one I haven't heard about, so I'll do some more research on it, and if I find an update better than this, I'll add it. But solar drag. Our sun exerts a solar drag on the small rocks and large particles in our solar system. This causes these particles to spiral down into the sun and be destroyed. At its present rate, our sun would have cleaned up all the particles within 50,000 years. And so in other words, they're saying these particles are still being found out there in abundance, and after 50,000 years there'd been none. The sun would have pulled them all in and they're gone. Is what I've been able to find out so far. I think it was at 20,000 years. They estimated probably about maybe half or so, and then all of it would have been about 50,000. So I'm still looking up on that. Like I said, that's one I haven't heard of, is the solar drag. Evidence from other planets in our own solar system. That one I just want to discuss briefly because there's really only one main planet I wanted to focus on with this, and that's Saturn and its rings. The rings wouldn't be there. They would have been destroyed by now because they're made up of ammonia, not water vapor. And it has been estimated that they should have been gone long ago by the billions and millions of years, but yet they're still there. Excuse me. And that leans towards a younger solar system, young Earth, and also by the meteors going through them, destroying the rings, moving them, and so on. It also, if the universe and the Earth were billions of years, they should be gone completely by now, but they're still there. So that was just a brief thing with the other planets in our solar system. That was the main one. There was others with Jupiter's moons and so on, but that really wasn't too much in depth. I like the one about Saturn better. The one with Jupiter's moons really, if they all formed at the same time, why are they so different? They're different sizes or different orbits and all this mess. But like I said, I think the better one of the two to talk about was Saturn's rings, because very few people talk about those. Okay, evidence from our own moon. Moon dust. Now this one I'm sure a lot of y'all have heard about. If the moon were billions of years old, it would have a dust layer of 20 to 60 miles deep, or by the metric system, 32 to 97 kilometers thick. And what they found when they went up, and actually there was a lot of speculation that when the astronauts went up there, they tried to form plates for the lander so it wouldn't sink into the moon, because they actually thought it was miles thick of dust. But when they got up there, they found it was only like barely 2 inches. And let's see, what there is barely 2 to 3 inches, or 5.08 to 7.62 centimeters of actual dust on the moon's surface. And that's what they found. That's scientific. And it just shocked them, because they were expecting this really thick dust that these astronauts would just sink right through, and yet they didn't. There's only 1/60th of all the dust on the moon is believed to have come from outer space. So again, if it was billions of years old or even millions of years old, the moon would have much thicker dust on it than what it does, but it doesn't. Lunar soil. The dirt on the moon does not reveal the amount of soil mixing that would be expected if the moon was billions of years old. Again, the soil mixture they found didn't match up with the billions of years side. It actually matched up with the creation side of the Earth and everything being less than 8,000 years old. Lunar isotopes. This one I did find very fascinating, because it's one I didn't know about, but the more I dug into it, the more I want to look into it and research. And I'm still going to look into it and research, because It's pretty fascinating. This one I didn't know about, but it's pretty cool. Excuse me. Short-lived uranium 236 and thorium 230 were found in those moon rocks, or in the moon rocks that they brought back. Short-term radioactive isotopes do not last long, hence why they're called short-term. They quickly turn into their end product, lead. If the moon were even 50,000 years old, these would have long since decayed into lead, but yet they found them abundantly in a lot of the rocks in almost all the rocks they brought back. I think there might have been a handful that didn't have it. Still had lead in it, but not a lot. No, excuse me. It still had the thorium and the uranium in it, but more lead than that in some of them. But the fact that it still had that in there is showing much younger than what they originally thought. So, yeah, like I said, the short-lived elements, I hadn't known about that, and when I looked up, it just shocked me because even like I said, I didn't even know about it, but when I read about it, it shocked me, and that's scientific. They proved that. Lunar recession. The moon is too close to Earth. It is gradually moving farther away. 20,000 to 30,000 years ago, the moon would have actually fallen or be touching the Earth. So, in other words, I think it was 4 centimeters or something is what it's calculated. Every year it moves away further. And what they calculate, if you backtrack it, about between 20,000 and 30,000 years, somewhere in there, it actually would have been touching the surface of the Earth. Because it would have been so close, the gravity Earth would have pulled it in, or it would just been touching. So just that alone shows that the Earth and the Moon are a lot younger than millions and billions of years. Alrighty, next. Evidence from our atmosphere. Atmospheric helium. Forgive me if I mess up these scientists' names. A study done by Kofal and Seagraves have concluded that by using 3 different helium sources, which I'll show you what they are in a minute, in their calculations, Earth's atmosphere age would be reduced to less than 10,000 years. So in other words, the helium that they checked through the 3 different sources, like I said, I'll tell you in a second, I just want to get over this. They checked it and they add all of them into the calculations that they did, and they said, well, wait a minute, all of them are showing that with the amount of helium and so on, the Earth is less than 10,000 years old. It's not millions or billions of years. Now, here's the ones they did. Decay of uranium and thorium, which does produce helium. Cosmic helium. Nuclear reactions in the Earth's crust that produce helium. And they measured them, did calculations, and these 2 have found that it all matches up to the Earth being less than 10,000 years old and not millions and billions of years, which, again, is scientific. Now, the next one is carbon-14 disintegration. Now, I really won't go too in-depth with this one. I want to wait to really go in-depth with carbon-14 along with the other dating methods in a later video, but I'm going to go over it briefly. The present worldwide buildup of radiocarbons in the atmosphere would have produced all the world's radiocarbon in several thousand years. Now, Robert Whitelaw found that the production rate is not equal to the disintegration rate. His research shows the clock, the decay rate clock, was turned on no more than about 8,000 to 9,000 years ago, which again matches up with the biblical account. Because you have a lot of them saying 6,000 years. I think the Earth is a little bit older than that. I think the Earth is actually definitely less than 10,000 years old, but I think it's just under 8,000 years old. But like I said, Robert Whitelaw's research found that with the disintegration rate and everything, the clock turned on at around 8,000 years ago, which would match up biblically. Evidence from the Earth itself. Now, I did skip some other ones because there were a bunch. But like I said, I wanted to just hit a few. And what I'll probably do is I'll make a video that just goes over the others I didn't do much later on. But I just wanted to get through these brief ones. Okay. The Earth's rotation. The spin of the Earth, which is now about 1,000 miles per hour or 1,609 kilometers an hour, is gradually slowing down, which means it used to be faster. I mean, that's just common sense. If it's slowing down, it used to be faster. And what they found is at a certain point, right at between, I want to remember, I think it was about 20,000 years, somewhere around there, the Earth would have been spinning so fast, it would have been a flat plate like a pancake. um, because of the rotation was so fast. It wouldn't have been able to preserve life and so on. So that shows a younger Earth too. Magnetic field decay. I'm sure this is one a lot of y'all have heard as well. The magnetic field is decaying. Since 1835, it has decreased by 14 to 15%. Backtrack this decay rate, the Earth would have had so much Joule heat from the magnetic force that would have created enough Joule heat to where it would have been liquefied. In other words, the Earth would have been liquefied from just the amount of heat from the magnetic field, which is Joule heat. By Joule, it's Joule, by the way. This calculation also shows that the Earth could not be over 7,000 to 8,000 years old. For the main reason I just said. The best it could have done is about 7,000 to 8,000 years. Anything past that, especially drastically past that, the magnetic field would have been so strong there would have been life on Earth to begin with. Evidence from beneath the Earth's surface. Escaping natural gas. Natural gas is escaping through shale caps. Recent studies analyzed the rate of the escape. It was found to be far too rapid to agree with the evolutionary theory. In other words, for it to be millions or billions of years old, there actually wouldn't be any natural gas. This escape rate's too fast. They didn't really go into if it would help with. It does help with a younger Earth, but they didn't go into would it fit the less than 8,000 years. From everything I found, it just says that it doesn't fit that theory, or it doesn't fit the theory of millions and billions of years. It doesn't really say how it could help the younger 8,000-year-old. So, but it definitely does help show the Earth couldn't be millions or billions of years, but they didn't really go into depth about how 8,000 years would it still matter. So I will do some more research on that as well, and if I can find anything, I'll post an update underneath this video, as you'll see it listed as updates, and I'll post them. Oil pressure. Oil pressure in these oil beds should have bled off after about 10,000 years. The great pressure currently existing helped to point to the Earth being less than 7,000 to 8,000 years old. What it's talking about is every time you see these oil platforms, oil drillers, whatever, as soon as they strike oil, it becomes a geyser for a brief amount of time. That's because it's under intense pressure under the Earth's surface. And what they found is it should have bled off, but yet there's still immense pressure there, which leads to the 7,000 to 8,000 year old age of the Earth. Okay, molten Earth. The Earth's molten rock should have cooled far more than it has right now. So in other words, the molten rock is still too hot to match up with the millions and billions of years. It should have cooled off way more than what it is. I put a note in here that I covered a little bit in the last video, which will actually go into the dating stuff. Zircon lead ratio is not doesn't match up, and the zircon helium ratio doesn't match up as well. I covered that in my last video on the origin of the Earth, but I'll cover more of it, like I said, in dating methods. Okay, evidence from the actual civilization of the Earth. Population. This is another one which I have heard about, but when I actually went through their calculation and everything, there was stuff I didn't know about, so I definitely put notes on this one. The human population is too small to have been here millions of years. It actually matches the Bible. From the flood till Jesus, there would be nearly 300 million people, which does match up. And that's just a small family. That's not talking about the ones that might have had triplets, quadruplets, whatever. That's just small family rate. And so there, it's from the flood to Jesus, with a lifespan, small family rate of maybe 1 to 2 children total, and so on, that has been estimated through calculations. There would have been about 300 million people, and from there they calculate it, and you get roughly about the 7 billion. The amount of people we have today. Was it billion or trillion? I have to look that up. I can't remember if it was billion people or trillion people. But yeah, so it would match up to the amount of population we have today. In contrast, however, if there was no flood, the population up to Jesus' time, or at Jesus' time, would have been 2 times 10 to the 43rd power. And that's based on a 1/100th% growth rate, or 0.01 growth rate. So you would have 2 times 10 to the 43rd power amount of people if there was no flood and we had been here for millions of years, and that's a lot of dang people. But we don't have that. We have far less than that. So just the population part alone helps disprove the millions of years. So, like I said, I just wanted to cover just a few of those. There's a lot more to cover. Like I said, there's probably well over 100 different evidences for a younger Earth, younger universe. But I'm trying to keep the videos a little short instead of kind of long distance, long and lengthy for like hours and so on. So I'm trying to keep them short. So I just take some good points and take my little notes, outline them, and I'll cover them. Please be here next time for we'll cover the problem of time with creation versus evolutionism. And like I said, hopefully these videos are helping strengthen your faith in God's Word, and hopefully just strengthen your faith overall in creation and so on. And like I said, I've said this before, I'll say it again. Science stands alone. And there's 2 worldviews when it comes to science. You have the creation view and you have the evolutionist view. That's it. That's the thing. But the evolution side wants you to think theirs is science, it is fact. And as we're going through it, you'll find that they have a lot of problems with their theory. And actually what it boils down to is it's more religion than theory. They have to believe it. It's a belief system. And I've actually, like I said, I've talked to a few people that do believe in evolution, and they've told me straightforward, yeah, it's a belief, but I choose to believe that over yours. And I'm like, well, at least you're willing to admit it. And you have you have plenty of them today, they won't admit that. Nope, it's fact. I'm like, no, it's not. And like I said, this is just a lot of stuff that I've used to talk to people and so on. But like I said, hopefully these videos are helping y'all. Hopefully they're strengthening your faith in the Word of God and bring you closer to Jesus Christ. And like I said, just hopefully it'll continue to help you. And I will see y'all next time when I go over the problem of time with the creation versus evolutionism. And after a certain point, what I'll do is I'll take a break from that and I'll go back to doing some apologetics with starting with Genesis. We'll do it chapter by chapter per video. And I'll try and go over that as well. But before I get into Genesis, I've had a lot of my friends ask me, even church members and so on. They said, well, are we supposed to follow all the laws that they had in like Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and so on? And I tell them, no, that was for just the Israelites, not us today. The only ones that do apply to us today is the 10 Commandments. And then you need to read Acts chapter 15, which I will do in a video later on. But yeah, so again, hopefully these videos are helping y'all, and I hope y'all have a blessed week and a happy life. And no matter whether you believe or not, that God will continue to bless you anyway, and will always keep y'all safe. Till next time, God bless.